Daniela, it's a hard question to put to you, but I know you're fully capable. What do we as a country do tonight when we have another black woman appealing to the rest of us, including the politicians, to hear her and do something about that which continues to occur?
You know, that was a really tough press conference to watch. I watched the whole thing, and it just broke my heart that once again we have another grieving mother who is praying for her son to survive after being shot in the back by police. And what we're going to hear tonight probably is nothing about this. We'll hear silence because this current Republican Party is incapable of acknowledging the systemic racism and the structural racism that causes these issues to keep happening. It's like George Floyd is the floor, and it's because we have video of 8 minutes of watching his life being snuffed in front of us. So even Donald Trump Jr. has to acknowledge that what happened to George Floyd is wrong. But you will not hear come out of his mouth or anybody else the issues, the environment, the structures that allow something like this to happen over and over and over again. And you may hear the emotion in my voice. And it's because I am so sick and tired of having this conversation, of worrying about the country that my young black boy, who's 3 years old right now, is going to grow up in, and watching these leaders last night at the convention just lie about the current state of this country. It was completely disgusting. It broke all the norms, as John said. And, you know, we'll see what happens tonight, but I would not hold my breath that anybody on that stage will really address the problems that are happening. They are just throwing red meat to their base.
And with regard to bearing witness to this, as you say, hard to watch, whether you're a citizen or whether you're involved in some way, or whether, as we do in the newsroom, we go through and we look through all of it and listen to it. Mr. Blake's father also said in his own language, and I'll play it so people, again, can hear it in his own words, but he said his version of what the summer protests have been about, what John Lewis's life was about that Mr. Meacham has been documenting, that Black Lives Matter. Let's play a little bit more here. This is from another Blake family member, Mr. Blake's father.
They shot my son 7 times. 7 times. Like he didn't matter. But my son matters. He's a human being, and he matters.
Daniela.
I mean, what can you say to that? He's right. Black Lives Matter. It's not just a slogan. It's what people have been marching about and talking about for months, for years. And, you know, I thought that there were some really great things that were said in that press conference. But, you know, one thing was somebody mentioned benefit of the doubt, that people often ask us, Black people, to give the police officers the benefit of the doubt. You know, I have cops in my family, and I know how hard that job is. But that's a two-way street. And what you often see is that law enforcement officers are not giving Black people the benefit of the doubt. It is shoot first, ask questions later. And when you represent the state, when you have all the power, that's not right. And, you know, this can't keep happening over and over again. And the reaction of his father, the reaction of his mother, of his sisters, you know, it's something that all of us should understand and should be able to empathize with that. No matter whether or not you're Black, white, whether you've had any interactions with police officers or not, you should be able to feel that empathy and understand what they're going through. And what I feel is lacking from Donald Trump on down is empathy. I don't remember hearing anything really about the 180,000 people who have lost their lives to the coronavirus yesterday. Maybe we'll hear something tomorrow. But if you didn't know any better and you just turned on the news and watched the convention yesterday, you would have thought that Donald Trump had done a bang-up job with handling the coronavirus, and that's just not true. what is, like I said, what is lacking is some empathy from our leaders, from this party, from this president.
John?
I couldn't agree more. It's empathy and action, right? I mean, we are beyond thoughts and prayers. We are at a point in the country, and have been for going on 400 years, where we've systemically committed violent acts against people because of the color of their skin. That's not a partisan point. That doesn't have anything to do with a convention or even a single election. It's been part of who we are. And when we say that in the Trump era, this isn't who we are, the hell it's not who we are. It's who we've been. It's what happened there is the latest example of a perennial problem, perennial tragedy that we must confront.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.